Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going straight into the heart of corporate structures. We're talking about the board of directors.
That's right. Their structure, their roles, all those responsibilities. We've been looking at some great material from ondemanded.com to guide us.
And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to give you a really clear picture of this, well, pretty vital corporate body.
Exactly. What it is, what it actually does, and, why it matters in the grand scheme of things, how these companies operate and affect all of us, really.
Okay, so let's kick things off. The board of directors, or BOD, as you often hear it called, it's essentially a group of people, right? Elected individual.
Elected, yeah. And their job is to represent the company's objectives, but crucially, while keeping an eye on the interest of the stakeholders.
And stakeholders isn't just shareholders, is it? It's broader.
Much broader. You're talking employees, customers, shareholders, of course, but also the community. Anyone with a stake in how the company performs.
So where does this board sit in the company pyramid?
Right at the very top. They're the highest layer in the corporate hierarchy.
Okay, so not involved in the everyday grind.
Not typically, no.
Yeah.
Their main concern is more strategic, making sure the firm is, proficiently achieving its targets, staying on course.
Think of them as the ship's navigators.
That's a good way to put it.
Oh.
They set the direction. Key duties include holding the company accountable, big financial decisions, overall management oversight.
Policy setting, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Setting policies, ensuring legal compliance. It's a pretty wide remit.
And I guess the way these boards are actually put together isn't always the same.
Not at all. It really varies. Depends on the company's size, what type of company it is, even the legal jurisdiction it operates under.
But there must be some common roles you tend to see.
Oh, for sure. You almost always have a chairman.
The head honcho, basically.
Kind of, yeah. The highest authority on the board. They lead the meetings, make sure the governance processes are working effectively.
And sometimes the chairman is also the CEO. I've heard about that.
You do see that. It can, maybe, streamline things, but it definitely concentrates power.
Which could potentially weaken oversight, right? Something for you, the listener, to think about when looking at a company. Efficiency versus that independent check.
That's a really important point. Then you often have a managing director.
Their focus is more operational.
More on the execution side, yes. Overseeing the day-to-day operations, implementing the board's strategies.
Okay. And then executive directors. Who are they?
These are people who are also employees, usually senior managers, heads of marketing, finance, business development, that sort of thing.
So they bring the internal perspective.
Exactly. They represent the executive team's interests and knowledge on the board.
Contrasting with the non-executive directors.
Right. These are the external advisors. They're brought in for their independence, their outside perspective.
Kind of like the unbiased eyes and ears.
Precisely. They're there to ask the tough questions insiders might miss. Crucial for transparency, accountability.
Makes sense. Our source also flags other key people who interact a lot with the board. CFO, VPs.
Zonal heads, audit and compliance chiefs. Yeah, a whole network feeding into and being overseen by the board.
So you can see how it's this central hub bringing different views together.
It really is. Now, should we get into the nitty-gritty of what they actually do? Their responsibilities in more detail?
Yeah, let's do that. Strategic decision-making seems like a big one.
Paramount. They're the ones signing off on the major company strategies. Think mergers, acquisitions, big new business ventures.
So they approve the big moves.
They approve them and often help shape them too. It's not just a rubber stamp. Another massive one is appointing the leadership.
Hiring the CEO.
Hiring, evaluating, and yes, sometimes removing the CEO and other top execs. It's about holding management accountable for delivering on the strategy.
Okay. And finance, they're involved there too.
Deeply involved. Approving budgets, keeping a close eye on financial performance, deciding on dividend payouts to shareholders.
And, those financial decisions, they have ripple effects, don't they? For you listening, think about investments, retirement funds, often tied to company performance, steered by these boards.
That's a critical connection to make. They also handle policy development, setting the corporate rulebook, making sure the company stays on the right side of the law.
And hopefully rarely crisis management.
Yes. When things go wrong, financially or reputationally, the board needs to guide the company through it.
So who are these people serving on boards? How long do they typically stay?
Good question. The source suggests a typical tenure is around 5 to 10 years.
Can it be longer?
It can, but often requires a special resolution, like a specific vote, to extend it beyond that kind of time frame.
And compensation, I imagine it's significant.
It generally is. We're talking an annual salary, often combined with stock grants.
I saw a figure, a 2017 survey, mentioned half of large U.S. corporations paid board members over $300,000 a year, plus extras for meetings.
That's the kind of figure reported, yes.
Yeah.
It's substantial.
Really underscores the weight of their decisions, doesn't it? Makes you wonder about the scrutiny involved.
It certainly does. But what about their own liability? Are they personally on the hook if the company gets into trouble?
That's a key question.
Generally, no. Because the company is a separate legal entity, the directors aren't usually personally responsible for its debts or obligations.
But there's a catch.
There is, a big one. They can be held personally liable for losses if those losses are a direct result of their actions or, importantly, your negligence.
Ah, okay. So there is personal risk involved. Now, if you, our listener, wanted to find out who's on the board of a company you're interested in, where would you look?
Several places. Public companies usually list them on their official websites.
In the investor relations or about us section, maybe?
Often, yes. There's also something called the company's incumbency certificate, which details key roles.
What about outside the company itself?
Business journals, news articles, financial publications, they frequently report on board appointments or changes.
Corporate directories, too.
And business listings, yeah. Those can be good resources as well.
Okay. Now, what if a director doesn't fulfill their duties? Or worse, are there grounds for getting kicked off the board?
Definitely. The information outlines several reasons for disqualification. Things like misusing company money or resources for personal benefit.
Obvious ethical breach there.
Clearly. Also, fraud or serious misconduct, or continuing to trade after the company is clearly insolvent or bankrupt.
What about basic compliance stuff?
That too. Failing to keep proper accounts, not publishing financial records, failing to submit tax filings.
Or just carrying on business when they know they can't pay their debts.
Exactly. All serious breaches of that duty they owe to the company and its stakeholders.
And these rules are there for protection, right?
Absolutely. To safeguard the company, shareholders, everyone involved from poor or unethical leadership.
Let's shift gears slightly. We've mostly talked about a kind of U.S.-centric model, maybe. Does it look different elsewhere?
It often does. Outside the U.S., it's quite common to find a two-tiered board structure.
2 tiers. How does that work?
You typically have a supervisory board and an executive board.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, the executive board is usually made up of company insiders, often selected by both workers and stockholders. The CEO or another senior officer often chairs it.
And their focus.
More on the day-to-day management, running the business, executing strategy.
And the supervisory board.
They take a wider view, deal with broader strategic issues. It functions a bit more like the conventional U.S. board we've been discussing.
And the chair is different.
Yes. The chair is someone other than the CEO, and the position often rotates. Think Germany, for example. This is common there. It often aims to increase worker input and provide more independent oversight.
Interesting. So it creates more distinct layers of management and oversight.
That's the idea. More robust system of checks and balances, you could say.
Our source also laid out the differences between the CEO and the board pretty clearly. Maybe we can just talk through that.
Sure. So the CEO, that's your top executive officer.
Yeah.
Right. Managing the daily stuff, implementing the board's plans.
And they're accountable to the board. Their focus is usually more short to midterm performance, making operational decisions.
Whereas the board is the governing body, the oversight layer.
Exactly. They set the overall corporate strategy, they oversee management, and crucially, they appoint, supervise, and can remove the CEO.
Their accountability is different too.
The board is accountable to the shareholders, and their focus is much more long-term. The company's vision, its governance, high-level strategic decisions are their domain.
So summing up a bit, the board of directors really acts as a kind of substitute for the stakeholders, yeah.
A representative body, elected, acting as agents for the firm. That's a good way to put it.
And it's not just for-profit companies. Non-profit, some government bodies have them too.
That's right. And as we've seen, the structure, it could look quite different depending on the firm, the country, the regulations.
Board size varies too, I suppose.
It does. Maybe up to 30 members is typical. But for really large, complex public firms, it could even be larger.
And it's worth mentioning, the insights we've discussed lean on the expertise from On Demand International, specifically Xavier Keller.
Right, a senior consultant there. His experience helping hundreds of firms with formation, international expansion, It really grounds this discussion in real-world practice.
So the bottom line is the board of directors is this really critical governing body.
Absolutely vital. Its main job is ensuring the company runs effectively, responsibly, and always in the best interests of all its stakeholders.
And as we touched upon, how they're set up and operate varies globally. That's definitely something to keep in mind in today's business world.
Which kind of leads to a final thought maybe for you to ponder.
Ray.
Given the responsibilities, the potential liability we talked about,
Mm.
what really drives people to serve on these boards?
Yeah, what's the motivation? And perhaps more intriguingly, what unseen factors, what influences might be shaping the incredibly important decisions they make?